and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and pedantic, insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Thursday. Have you looked outside this morning? It's a little bit frosty. I think, my friend, that old man winter has finally arrived. I mean, he's kind of a slow old guy, or at least he was this year. But looking out the window of the studio this morning, it looks to be kind of cold, which reminds me, because it is getting kind of cold, you should probably get a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. You go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. They're the warmest socks that I've ever put on my feet. They make a variety of different styles, but considering what's happening outside, you should probably go get a pair. Well, anyway, my friends, welcome to the program. There is a lot happening on Cowboy State Politics this morning. Early this morning, I sent out the very first edition of the Cowboy State newsletter. It's called The Outrider. I'm really excited about the title. You know, the lovely Christine and I went back and forth on what to call the newsletter several times, and we settled on the Outrider. So I sent that out this morning. Let me just give you a little sneak peek what it looks like. Let's see here. Here we go. So check this out. This is what it looks like. It's really quick and easy. You got the top story on the very front of it. Gordon releases his biennial budget. And of course, if you listened to the podcast yesterday, I was none too pleased with old Gordon, Go Green Gordon or whatever you want to call him, because he's a spendthrift and he's a redcoat. And I just and look at the picture of him. Anyway, so you got links to the podcast yesterday as the top story. There's links to the interview I did with AJ Richards. I went back and watched it yesterday. That's actually a really good interview. He makes a number of really good points. And then there's a couple of thoughts about what happened at the Wyoming GOP State Central Committee meeting. They're getting awfully close to regulating speech. I mean, I don't think they're there yet, but it's a fine line that you walk, my friends, when you're talking about free speech. And I think that we should err on the side of more speech rather than less speech. And I don't think that the government has any business regulating any of it. In fact, I think that we should let the free market handle it, which it obviously does. And there's this episode, or I guess it was a live show, but the question of if we're snowflakes now, that's a really good discussion. Ken and I went back and forth, and we also did in the last live show. So anyway, the newsletter went out this morning. If you didn't get a copy of it, it means you haven't sent me your email address. So if you want to be on the newsletter list, and I suggest you do, go to cowboystatepolitics.com, the website. A little pop-up will show, it's the first thing you see, and it says join our newsletter. And Put your email address in there and hit submit. And if you do get the outrider, go ahead and send it out to anyone you want. And the farther and wider that it goes, the better. So anyway, exciting news there. Also coming very, very soon. I know I've been ramping up to this for a while. The Open Range Record app. It is almost complete. I had a couple of hurdles to go over, but I think I've got those ironed out. So that's going to be happening within the next week or so. So that's super exciting. And we may have, and I don't know if this is going to be for sure, this morning we may have an interview with Wyoming Secretary of State Chuck Gray. I was texting back and forth with him yesterday, and we got to the point where, hey, what time? Will 9 o'clock work? And that's when he stopped responding. So there's a distinct possibility that we may have a conversation with the Secretary of State later on in the program. So there's a lot happening this morning, and there's a lot happening in our state, too. Let's see here. I think that we'll go ahead and start with the governor's budget. You see, buried deep in there, he eliminated some funding from the Secretary of State's office to advertise the ballot measure. Now, that's the one to reduce your property taxes, a one-time shot of 50%. And it was signed by over 30,000 Wyoming citizens. And so constitutionally, that thing has to show up on the ballot next election. And a number of the redcoats, including Governor Gordon, have tried really, really hard not to make sure that thing, that people don't know about it, that they don't know what it is, that they don't vote for it, because, like the redcoats are screaming bloody murder, that it's going to destroy Wyoming's budget, that that's too big of a property tax hit. But the truth is, when you do the math, when you figure out how much your county and city revenue are dependent upon residential property taxes, it's actually a really, really small number. Years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I did an episode called 50% really equals, I think it was 5%. But it goes through all of the math with the budget proposal. And the truth is, counties and cities really don't rely on residential property taxes all that much at all for their total revenue. It ends up being a really, really small number. Now, it's big to you and me because we're the ones cutting the check for our property taxes, but for the county and the city, it's not the Chicken Little scenario that everybody is, that all the public officials are going on about. So anyway, that's going to be on the ballot in 2026. And the state is legally obligated to inform you about it. They have to advertise. They have to tell you, hey, this thing's going to be on the ballot, and here's what it means. Well, the governor removed funding for any of that advertising. And the Secretary of State, Chuck Gray, he put out a video yesterday on his social media pages talking about it. Now, it's kind of long. The whole video's about 4 or 5 minutes, but I'm just going to play you a little bit of it so you get an idea of what our Secretary of State is talking about. And if he joins the program at the top of the second hour, then we'll get him to explain it. But in the meantime, here is what Secretary of State Chuck Gray put on his website. Check this out.
This is Wyoming Secretary of State Chuck Gray. I want to talk about a series of very disturbing actions that Governor Mark Gordon took earlier this week that are an attempt to interfere with, and Gordon is trying to stop the property tax reduction ballot initiative that over 30,000 Wyomingites have signed. And in the process, Gordon is trying to silence the will of Wyomingites who have signed that property tax ballot initiative that has been certified to appear on the ballot pursuant to the Wyoming State Constitution. Earlier this week, Mark Gordon denied budget authority for the notice that is required under Wyoming state law for the initiative process to be conducted properly. And that notice is laid out in Wyoming state law, and it requires that in the preceding 12 weeks before the election, that in all 23 counties that notice is provided in a newspaper of general circulation. Now, those notice requirements have always been footnoted in our budget because of the series that is in. It must be footnoted in order for it to be legally conducted. And that budget authority for that notice was what Governor Gordon denied earlier this week. And this is a clear attempt to prevent the initiative from being properly conducted. It is also an attempt to interfere with that property tax reduction ballot initiative. And we've seen Governor Mark Gordon oppose property tax reduction time and time again. And I'm afraid that that is what is motivating these actions from Governor Mark Gordon earlier this week.
Okay, so that's what he says. And like I said, the whole video goes on for another 2 or 3 minutes. But essentially, Governor Gordon removed the money necessary to advertise for that ballot measure from his proposed budget. Now, I covered that yesterday on the podcast at a really, really high level. There's a lot of junk in there. And if you know what, I need to put a link to the budget on the Cowboy State Politics website so it's easy for you to find. So after today's program, I'll make sure that I do that. It's ridiculous, my friends. It is at $11.13 billion for a state of 586,000 people. And if you do the math, that's 20 grand for every man, woman, and child in this state. $20,000 for every man, woman, and child. Now, the lie of the redcoats is, well, Wyoming citizens receive a lot more services than they actually pay in. That's bull crap. Not every Wyoming citizen takes advantage of state resources, but what they're saying is, well, the schools and the roads and everything. Hey, that's why we pay taxes, Jack. That's not a reason why you can increase taxes. But this is the game that the redcoats play. It is constantly increase the amount of money that you have to pay for the services that you've already paid for. It's a big, every once in a while you see a meme of this. Please fix the potholes, which I've already paid for in the street, which I've already been taxed for, which I drive on in the car that I'm already taxed for, that I pull in my driveway that I'm heavily taxed for. So please, would you just do your darn job? But I mean, that's how taxpayers feel. That's how I feel. That listen, man, you're taxing me at every point, and you can't even fix the darn pothole. Well, I mean, the same should hold true for Governor Gordon's budget of $11.13 billion. Which, and I point this out in the podcast that in 2020, the budget for Wyoming was $5.6 billion. Now, if you account for inflation, and let's be honest, there was a lot of inflation between 2020 and today, it's a staggering 25.5%. But if you account for inflation, that same thing that we spent all that $5.6 billion on it would cost us $7 billion today. And to do the exact same thing we did last budget cycle, everything that Governor Gordon told us was absolutely necessary, and the Senate threw in all of the schools and all of the pork barrel spending. That same budget, and this is Gordon's own math. You can look at the budget book and find this out. But that same amount of services this year would cost us $9 billion. Notice the difference. The cost actually went down. And then Governor Gordon added another $2 billion and change on top of it. So anyway, go listen to the podcast, and hopefully we'll have Secretary of State Chuck Gray on at the top of the second hour to talk about what Gordon's been doing. Meanwhile, at the Management Council, and first, before I get into this, there ought to be an investigation as to why the cow pie is printing such long articles. Look at this thing. It's over 10 pages, and I took out all of the pictures out of it. But this thing is ridiculous. Nobody is going to read this entire piece. One of the reasons why they're increasing the size of their articles is so that Google will recognize more keywords in the article. That's the only reason they're doing it, is to get higher ratings on all the search engines, which I'll admit I kind of take advantage of myself. But man, it's super irritating. So from the cow pie, sparks fly at Management Council over Honor Wyoming's blocked email claims. Now, the headline, let's just talk about that for a minute. Honor Wyoming has done a lot of research into whether or not their emails are landing in the inboxes of legislators. Now, the defense that Slithers and Dennis Beitman are using is, hey, it goes into the quarantine file or the junk file, and everybody can go look at that. Nobody is blocking emails. Well, first, in the state's email system, if there are emails directed, and by the way, the LSO claims that they have nothing to do with that, they can't alter this. That's bullcrap, my friends. You can whitelist email addresses in any email system. It's a piece of cake. Don't let Slithers and Dennis convince you otherwise. You can do it with your own email program. Sometimes, invariably, one of your emails will end up in the junk file. Mine do all the time with the legislature. Weird. I wonder why that is. Anyway, you can whitelist email addresses. And Honor Wyoming found that a significant number of their emails were landing in junk or in quarantine. Now, it's the quarantine file that is concerning, because what that is when an email tricks the malware sensors of the email program, and it automatically throws it into the quarantine file. Now, is an email from an advocacy group going to automatically do that? I would say under normal circumstances, no. I mean, if there's, attachments are no big deal. I send attachments to legislators all the time. And that doesn't end you up in quarantine. But evidently, their emails do end up there. And it's Slithers and Dennis are saying that, legislators, you can go look in your quarantine file. So obviously, these emails aren't being blocked. With the volume of emails that legislators receive, I doubt very seriously that any of them are going to take the time to look in their junk file or in their quarantine file. And that, my friends, is the reason why Honor Wyoming started looking into this. But here's what the Cowboy says. Quote, Claire McFarland. By the way, she thinks that I don't like her. It's not that I don't like her. I don't like that she's a redcoat. And I don't like it that she masquerades as a journalist and, prints opinion, which is what this 10-page monstrosity is. It's mostly opinion, and it's absolutely biased towards Dennis and Slithers. We'll get to that in just a second. Quote, a panel of Wyoming legislature's highest-ranking members meeting Wednesday in Cheyenne rejected a controversial piece of legislation. Controversial, yeah. That the legislature ought to let your email go through. That apparently is controversial. Anyway, that would require legislative staff to keep a rolling list of emails people send to legislators. The list was presented as a way to help the Legislative Service Office cross-check what happens to the emails of people who believe that lawmakers aren't seeing them. The version that entered the meeting would have required LSO to publish a list of quarantined domain names and which posing security risks. LSO Deputy Operations Administrator Anthony Serra confirmed that to the panel, though later amended to keep that list private among legislative staffers. The bill died on a 5-5 tie vote, and an individual lawmaker could still carry it into the session, which opens February 9th. So why would it be such a problem for the Legislative Service Office to publish a list of all of the email addresses that have quarantined emails in them? Why is that such a big deal? Well, it's not. It is another tool to allow the Legislative Service Office to keep that stuff under wraps. Now, already, lawmakers' emails are not necessarily subject to the public records law. So if a legislator is corresponding with you, that's not subject to public records. So other emails are. If they're corresponding with, I don't know, some political action committee or something like that. But there are already restrictions on what the legislature has to publish. Now, this is an attempt by the LSO to keep what they're doing secret from you. Now, I don't want to gin up some sort of giant conspiracy, but it certainly sounds that way. If LSO is bucking the idea that maybe they should publish the list of websites and email addresses that are subject to this quarantine, and that's what it is, because see, emails get tagged as, phishing or, potentially dangerous or whatever, and they're sent to quarantine, and then legislators don't get to see them at all. And I've honestly, no offense to some of the guys and gals in the legislature, but many of them are not that tech savvy. And so a lot of them probably have no idea how to go find the quarantine file, which, of course, is what Slithers is using for her defense in this whole thing. Let's see here. Claire McFarland's opinion piece says constituent emails either go to a lawmaker's inbox or spam junk folder or to a quarantine file if they trip Microsoft's security concerns. Many third-party generated form emails land in the junk file, and legislators can check in those files. Yeah, yeah. Why would they do that if they're automatically labeled junk? I find a lot of my emails that I actually need land in my spam folder. So I think that Claire McFarland is even trying to float this argument shows you how incredibly biased the cow pie is. And it's, a lot of people thought that when Trotsky left the cow pie, that everything was going to turn around and everything was going to be, fantastic. Yeah, right. That Trotsky was the only redcoat at the cow pie is a fantasy. Let's see here. Page 2. Let's see here. Honor Wyoming, a nonprofit corporation, spearheaded the movement toward legislating the emails issue, according to statements and testimony given Wednesday in the Legislative Management Council. It did so while claiming that 99% of more than 1,500 Wyomingites surveyed agree that the Wyoming state government is violating free speech rights by blocking constituent emails to lawmakers. That's the text of a June 5th email, the address digital@honorwyoming.org, sent to Senate President Bo Biteman. His real name is Dennis, which Biteman provided Wednesday to the cow pie upon request. The email subject line makes a much broader claim, quote, that 99% of Wyomingites say state officials are violating free speech. Well, it's not a claim. It's the result of a survey that they conducted, and that 99% of those people surveyed said, yeah, we think that they are blocking emails. Lawmakers in Cheyenne killed the solution in the form of a 2025 House Bill 338, which Honor Wyoming asserted would have restored trust by requiring blocked emails to be disclosed and delivered unless they posed a legitimate security threat. A March 28th Facebook post by the group says thousands of emails have been silently blocked by the state's quarantine system. I don't have any data to back this up or proof or anything like that to say that claim is true, but it sounds pretty reasonable to me. Knowing a lot of what the LSO does, I mean, they're not exactly the most trustworthy group of people. I've heard from so many legislators that they'll submit a bill that, and LSO's job is to assist legislators in their work. But I have heard from so many legislators that they'll submit a bill and it either A, gets slow walked, and so it's not released until months after it was submitted, that B, it's so altered that it barely resembles what was originally presented, or C, has so many attachments to it that are meant to convince other legislators that the bill is unconstitutional or it's going to cost so much money. See, none of that is their job. Their job is to present the bill and be the legislators' lawyers. That's their whole job. But the LSO goes far, far beyond that. And this whole email thing is an example of that. Page 85 of the Cow Pies article, quote, after Honor Wyoming spearheaded this issue, the legislature formed a subcommittee on the topic. The subcommittee met July 15th. Lawmakers were paid a collective $1,045 in per diem and salary to a whole grand, huh? Considering what the governor wants to spend, $1,000 is absolutely meaningless. Anyway, that figure doesn't include wages or expenses for legislative staff. Quote, we've given this issue hours this morning, said Dennis during Wednesday's meeting. Staff has given us hundreds, if not thousands, of taxpayer hours on this issue. You're getting very special treatment, Mr. Hill and Honor Wyoming. So the Hill that Dennis is referring to is Drake Hill. Drake Hill is the attorney of Honor Wyoming and also is former superintendent of public instruction's Cindy Hill's husband. Drake Hill and Cindy, they're, pretty recognizable figures around the Capitol. I've known both of them for quite some time, and, I think pretty fondly of them. But anyway, so Drake is the lawyer for Honor Wyoming. And, the piece goes on and on and on and on. And I mean, it's just, it's ridiculous. But you should go check it out, because the longer a piece is, the more effort is put into explaining the issue, the more likely that it is that the issue is probably true. I mean, this piece is roughly, well, let's just count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages long in 12-point font. So most pieces that you read on the net, 600 to 800 words ought to cover it, but not this monstrosity. So the likelihood that the legislature is blocking your emails is actually pretty high. So there you have it on that one. Let's see here. From the Turkey Vulture. Let's see. You know what? This is going to take me longer to go through than the 4 minutes that we have before the break. So we're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we'll go ahead and dive into Treasurer Kurt Meyer. Yay, fun! We'll be back after the break. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely, and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country, and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. This program is only going to continue to expand, and it did yet again this morning. Don't miss the Cowboy State Politics newsletter, Cowboy State Politics Live. This program every Tuesday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. and the Cowboy State Politics podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. Yesterday was a barn burner, my friends. If you missed it, you need to go back and listen to it, which, of course, you can find at Spotify or Amazon Music or iTunes or iHeartRadio or any of those places. But I heard from lots of Cowboy State Politics listeners, and the main comment was, so, you and Governor Gordon are going to be buddies again, huh? Yeah, Yeah. Well, anyway, moving on to another one of our statewide elected officers, Treasurer Kurt Meyer. Now, this one is pretty disturbing, if you ask me. And let me just kind of set this up for you a little bit. That Kurt Meyer is one of the, and I appreciate this about him. He shows up at just about every statewide Republican event. He engages with people, even people that disagree with him. And I mean, he's pretty accessible. Well, and the truth is, Megan Degenfelder was at the dinner as well. But Kurt Meyer, he's a pretty accessible guy. Well, in the Turkey Vulture, the Wyoming Tribune Eagle, there's a piece entitled "State Treasurer Meyer Praises Gordon's Approach to the Budget." Now, it doesn't sound very conservative of him. Let's see what the Turkey Vulture says. Quote, Wyoming State Treasurer Kurt Meyer said he likes the direction that Governor Mark Gordon took with his proposed 2027-2028 biennial budget, which was released Monday. In a news release, Meyer said Gordon's proposal is fiscally responsible and is a step in the treasurer's vision for a state that eventually should not need to worry about whether oil, gas, or minerals segment is in a boom or bust cycle. There is no way possible that Governor Gordon's budget could ever be considered conservative. There's nothing conservative about it. It is a spendthrift spree across the entire state. And the guy driving the stagecoach is Mark Gordon. It is incredible how much money is being spent in that darn thing. Just a couple items. There's $500 million going to the University of Wyoming. There's $54 million going to the Wyoming Business Council, an agency that the Wyoming government has no business messing around with. An agency that through its entire existence has blown hundreds of millions of your dollars, and their sole job is to increase the GDP of Wyoming. And in their entire existence, our GDP has gone down. You had one job, just one, and you couldn't even pull that one off. So Kurt Meyer says that the governor's budget is conservative. Poppycock. And I quote, as a widely reported after the release of the October report from the Consensus Revenue Estimating Group, the Craig report, Wyoming realized record investment earnings this fiscal year, Meyer said in the press release. Our investments generated $1.86 billion, beating returns from severance taxes and federal mineral royalties combined, patting himself on the back. As you know, I mean, Kurt Meyer does a good job being the state's treasurer. He does do that. He's pretty good at investing our cash and making money off of it. So kudos for that. But that doesn't mean that you're necessarily conservative. And if you're siding with Mark Gordon in nearly every vote on the slip board, that's what I said, my friends, Gordon and Treasurer Meyer are pretty much hand in glove on the slip board, and they have been for several months, perhaps even a couple of years. But pretty much every vote now, Meyer's right alongside Governor Gordon, including on the ridiculous synthetic jet fuel proposal that a Spanish company brought before the slip board to where they were going to make jet fuel on Wyoming state land and sell it to wealthy people at DIA. He voted for that one too. He's voted for windmills, voted for all this stuff. So he's not exactly acting like a conservative. Quote, yet Meyer said it's important to understand that a relatively small portion of the past year's earnings can go towards the budget, while the majority is earmarked for statutorily mandated permanent funds or other dedicated accounts. These include the Common School Permanent Land Fund, Hathaway Scholarship, and the Workers' Compensation Fund. Quote, it is important to recognize that these earnings help provide vital services to the citizens of Wyoming and keep individual tax contributions at a minimum, Meyer said. This year's investment earnings are a great example of how a guided approach can help shape Wyoming's future. Now, why would Treasurer Meyer, Kurt Meyer, be in favor of Gordon's approach? It's because the governor wants to put $250 million of your money into the savings account. And Gordon thinks that absolutely makes an argument for what he's calling his generational fund. Now, that is a fund in which he wants to take $100 million of your money and put it in a savings account that at some point in the future, at a yet to be determined time, that will eliminate property taxes. It is just another attempt to create another trust fund or coffee can so that they can take your money and slap it in a slush fund and you'll never see it again. As I mentioned yesterday, as Calvin Coolidge said, this was on the podcast, that taxing any more than necessary is legalized theft. And that, my friends, has been what the legislature, Governor Gordon, and now apparently Kurt Meyer are involved in. If they have hundreds of millions of dollars left over, then you shouldn't be taxed at all, or they should give it back to you. Now, that's a great idea, and it's one I'm actually in favor of, but it's also kind of impossible, according to the Wyoming Constitution. And so, the only recourse for the Wyoming legislature and for the governor, and now for Kurt Meyer, is to not tax so much, to allow that ballot measure to go through and add 4 or 5 more on top of it. Because if we're making so much money on our investments, and if the governor is doing such a great job with the budget, then we don't need to tax anybody. Now, do we? You see, these arguments always work in reverse also. The cow pie, the Wyoming turkey vulture, none of them are actually going to explore what these arguments actually mean. And, it's that, we need to have savings accounts for future, which, by the way, right now, right at this 10 seconds, there's 3.5 years worth of money in the bank to run the entire state of Wyoming, everything, education included, for 3.5 years. How much money do we need to put in savings? What's the number? What length of time do we need to be able to pay for before it's okay to stop taxing the bejesus out of Wyoming citizens? I mean, what's the number, Mark, Kurt? What is it? I mean, is it 30 billion? Is it 40 billion? Is it 50 billion? What is it? Just let us know so we can plan on when we don't have to pay these outrageous tax bills anymore. But of course, they're not going to do that. And this is the end part of that argument, because you expose that really Mark Gordon and now Kurt Meyer and all the redcoats are only interested in creating trust funds or coffee cans so that they can easily access them and push their pork barrel projects along. Gordon's famous for pork barrel projects, his direct air capture and carbon capture and sequestration and all of those pipe dreams. All of them he wants to pay for with your money, which, by the way, at the governor's discretion, he has about $400 million right at his fingertips that he doesn't have to go to the legislature for permission to spend it or anything. He can just find a project that he likes, spend it, and nobody is going to be the wiser. So, I mean, it's a giant shell game, my friends, and I'm pretty disappointed that Kurt Meyer, I used to like him. I mean, I guess on a personal level I do, but he's not acting very conservative, not at all. And he said he wants to come on the program, so I think I'm going to set up the interview, and we'll have him on the show. And I'm just going to ask him, hey, can you explain to me why all these things you're doing are conservative? Because I don't think they are. I don't think saddling up with Mark Gordon is, on a trip to, well, I shouldn't even go there. I don't think that saddling up with him is a great idea. I don't think it's conservative. Mark Gordon's definitely not a conservative. He's an East Coast liberal, always has been, and the only reason he's got an R hanging at the end of his name is so that he can get elected. But none of those things are actually good for Wyoming. I just, tax and spend more as much as we possibly can. And, there will never be an end to it, so long as liberals like Mark Gordon are in charge. And, hey, Kurt, if you're listening, you should stop acting like a redcoat. Stop voting with our liberal governor. Stop praising his radical spending. Stop praising the budget that he put out that's got so much pork tucked into it that I can't even find the way out. I mean, it's a sea of bacon fat that guy is swimming in. So just stop doing it, all right? Now, Wyoming and moving on, off my soapbox, so maybe we can get some work accomplished here. Wyoming and other Western states suffer from, kind of the same affliction a lot of times, and that is conservatives tend to, when we get a win, when we win control, we tend to sit back and say, mission accomplished. We can all relax now. But none of us really should, because that's not how the left acts at all. And there are Western states that are feeling the results of this, one of which happens to be Utah. Now, when we think about Western states, we tend to imagine that Utah would have to be pretty conservative. I mean, come on, it's jam-packed full of Mormons. Mormons tend to be pretty conservative, right? Some of them are. Some of them aren't. But as a whole, our perception of Utah is that it is fairly conservative. Well, not according to The Blaze. In an article entitled, "Utah Republicans Just Let Democrats Steal a Seat That They Could Never Win on Their Own." Now, the reason I'm bringing this article to you is I have been telling you for weeks not to ignore the Democrat Party in this state. They are definitely on the rise. Now, are they going to win, major elections? Yeah, I don't know, but they could definitely take out a few House members of the House of Representatives. They're definitely gaining ground in a lot of Wyoming communities. How else do you explain 200 people on the courthouse steps in Sheridan? Sheridan, of all places. During all of those No Kings protests all summer long, maybe there was 50 there. And I don't even think that number was that much. I could go through the pictures and count the number of protesters in at the biggest one that I took pictures of, but there wasn't 50 of them there. Now, so how do you explain 200 on the steps of the courthouse? Well, it's because the Democrats are being pretty effective in their messaging, and they're seeing results. So it's not just here, it's elsewhere. And let me just explain what, and the article goes on to explain why you should pay attention. So let me get into it. Quote, "Democrats weaponized ballot initiatives and the courts. Republicans hold supermajorities and do nothing. If the legislature won't impeach judicial usurpers, the left will own the state." Another formerly conservative state. Quote, "A Utah judge just turned a safe Republican congressional seat into a near guaranteed Democrat seat, and she did it in a state controlled top to bottom by Republicans. How's this happen? Well, a generation of weak Republicans in their elected branches handed liberals control of the judicial branch and gave them the ballot initiative system they needed to take over the state a piece at a time. Democrats can't win statewide office in half the country. Wyoming is one of those. Utah is another one. So they've turned ballot initiatives into their weapon of choice. Pollsters craft soothing messaging, activists gather signatures, and voters, thinking they're supporting neutrality, unknowingly approve measures that shift power to Democrats. Supermajority states serve as a control group. Now, the problem isn't power. The problem is the GOP's refusal to wield it. If the GOP actually chose to do their job and act like a political organization, like every other political organization in the country. Now, isn't that fascinating? There is a slew of different political organizations of all different purposes, all different names, and it's the GOP that doesn't actually behave like one of those political advocacy groups. It absolutely blows my mind. Now, in Wyoming, they're kind of hamstrung by some statutory limitations. One of those being the party can't pick a candidate during the primary. There's lots of problems with our election code. That just happens to be one of them. Now, they can in the general election, but in the general election, it doesn't matter. But there's a lot of things that they could do that the Wyoming Republican Party does not do. It's almost like they stop right at the end of the state central committee meeting, and that's it. That's the end of their activity. Okay, all right. So I see some Facebook posts every once in a while. But, I mean, it's nothing compared to what the left does. Back to the piece. Quote, "The nonpartisan redistricting commission," end quote, "scam remains their most effective tool. These commissions always promise fairness, and they always produce more Democrat seats." Utah proved the point in 2018 when 66% of voters approved Prop 4, even though most Utahns don't want Democrats running the state. The same tactic produced Medicaid expansion and marijuana legalization. None of these measures would have survived the legislature, but they passed once voters encountered them in isolation. James Madison warned against pure democracy for this exact reason. A republic draws authority from the great body of society, not from the small faction of self-appointed elite. ballot initiative commissions flip that logic on its head. They let unelected actors redraw power for themselves. They gerrymander their way into power. And by the way, it's not gerrymander, it's gerrymander, because the term was named after Eldridge Gerry, who created the Salamander district. The gerrymandering. Anyway, after the 2020 census, Utah's legislature drew a fourth Republican congressional seat, as the state constitution requires. Democrats and their allies at the League of Women Voters sued to nullify the map and force a Salt Lake-centered Democrat seat. In August, 3rd District Judge Diana Gibson obliged. She declared the legislature's map unconstitutional because, in her view, and this is why the left goes to judges, because it's one person they have to convince, not the entire state. In her view, it ignored Prop 4, even though the Constitution explicitly vests redistricting power in the legislature. She ordered a new process for 2026 and told both sides to submit maps. The GOP-controlled legislature complied, proposing a compromise map and passing SB 1011 to impose partisan fairness tests on future redistricting so the commission couldn't hand Democrats a permanent advantage. Gibson ignored it all. Well, of course she did. On November 10th, she tossed the legislative map, sidelined SB 1011, and adopted the map drawn by the very activist groups suing the state. The same groups that engineered Prop 4. You see how this whole thing is just incestuous? Nothing in Utah's constitution supports what Gibson did. Article 9, Section 1 states that the legislature shall divide the state into congressional districts. A commission cannot do it. A judge cannot do it. And activists certainly can't do it. Well, they did, and a judge approved of it. And so, this is the very problem that a lot of Western states are going to face because, and why do we live in the West? Why do we live in a place where it snows 9 months out of the year, or eight at least, and it gets really, really cold, and there's not a lot of people here, and we don't have the amenities of other cities? Why do we live here? It's to be left alone. Leave us alone. I'll do my thing. You do your thing. If you need help, call me. I'll come over and help you. But that same thinking, the reason why we live here, infects our politics because conservatives, we don't really want to get involved in politics. The reason why we're here is to be left alone. We don't want to be in everybody's business. I mean, it's the Democrats who want to get elected. And so Republicans have a tendency to let districts go to I don't know how you put it, to allow Democrats to be the ones that are active. Republicans don't do that. Oh, sure, we hold our swanky Reagan Day dinners, but we're not the ones that are out there beating the bushes and going door to door and holding these ridiculous protests. And, conservatives look at the 200 people on the courthouse step and we say, how dumb are these people? How really stupid can they be? Well, they're pretty darned effective. If you're able to get 200 people together on a Saturday afternoon in Sheridan, Wyoming, on the courthouse steps, I'd say you're pretty effective. Now, is that enough to win statewide election? No. Is it enough to win local elections? Darn skippy you are. There are a lot of elections in 2024 that turned on 150 votes. That's certainly enough. And honestly, it's not that hard to turn a couple hundred votes your way if you have a bunch of active people doing it. But, in Utah, as is, Wyoming could suffer the same fate because with similar thinking. If the Republicans don't get up and act, this sort of stuff is going to continue to happen. And Utah is just one of the most recent victims. They have redcoats too. Because they know that if you're a Democrat, you're probably not going to get elected. Or if you do, it's going to be pretty hard. And so they register as Republicans because it's easier. Because a lot of folks probably just look at the Republican brand on the ticket and say, yep, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it. I'm good to go. Same thing happens in Wyoming. Okay, so maybe Utah's chock full of a bunch of Mormons, way more than here. But that doesn't mean that the makeup of the legislature is really any different, that the attitudes of most of the people that live there, outside of the, metropolises, but the attitudes are probably very similar to people that live in Wyoming. Leave me the heck alone. I'll leave you the heck alone. And by the way, I don't like politics. And we disregard the truth that politics likes you. I say that to people all the time when they say, well, I don't really like to get involved in politics. And I say, well, that's a shame because politics really likes you. And they use the fact that you don't want to get involved. So anyway, my friends, there you have it. Redcoats in Utah. And, if they don't wise up, Utah is going to have the same fate. It's going to go the same way as Colorado. And, it's just fortunate in Wyoming that a big group of us figured out what was happening and we decided to get active. And now we've turned at least around one house of the legislature. We got to flip the other one because, Dennis did a number on the Senate and we've got to fix it. If we don't, well, it's we're gonna reap the consequences. And I hate to be the one standing there going, "See, I told you so." But it's I'm going to. Anyway, let's see. We got about 10 minutes left, and I've got a couple of pieces about our old pal Zoran. Not Zoran the Magnificent, the one you put the quarter in and it gives you a fortune. No. This guy's the communist that got elected in New York. But the Post-Millennial has a piece where Mamdani claims that New York City is, quote, a city of international law. You've got to watch this. We'll watch it, then we'll talk about it, and we'll probably have to go to a break. But this is absolutely incredible. Check it out.
Said you would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu based on the 2024 International Court Arrest Warrant. Next UN General Assembly, as mayor, would you do that?
So I've said time and again that I believe this is a city of international law, and being a city of international law means looking to uphold international law, and that means upholding the warrants from the International Criminal Court, whether they're for Benjamin Netanyahu or Vladimir Putin. I think that that's critically important to showcase our values, and unlike Donald Trump, I'm someone who looks to exist within the confines of the laws that we have. So I will look to exhaust every legal possibility, not to create my own laws to do so.
On the other hand, this is also a world event. Does that not count a little bit?
Well, I think we are a global city, but I also think what New Yorkers are looking for is consistency in the way in which we talk about our values and follow through on them. And that's why I think these warrants from the International Criminal Court, they are worth fully exploring every legal possibility to actually follow through on.
There are no legal possibilities to follow warrants from the International Court because we're not a country of international law. Old Zoran is trying to change us into that, but that is not how American courts work, nor is it how the courts in New York City work right now, anyway. But New York City is not and cannot be a country or a city of international law. Now, Zoran said during the campaign that he was going to try to arrest Netanyahu. He goes along in line with his anti-Semitic behavior. He did that all the way through the campaign, and anybody who says otherwise, who questioned whether he was going to do it, they just weren't paying attention. But from the Post-Millennial, New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani has said that the Big Apple is a city of international law and that he would uphold international warrants for figures such as Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, the reporter asked, you heard him say it, you said that you would arrest Netanyahu based on the 2024 International Court arrest warrant. Would you do that? And Mamdani replied, "So I've said it time and again," and you should put in quotation marks, "I told you I was going to do this. You should have believed me." But anyway, yeah. And, he goes on to say, and unlike Donald Trump, I'm someone who looks to exist within the confines of the laws that we have. We don't abide by international law. There's a good reason for that, because we have a constitution and we follow American law, not international. If we followed international law, there would be a whole bunch of different things that we would be doing different. There'd probably be blue helmets marching all around our communities, but we don't, because we have our own system, not one that functions. No, we don't let the international court tell us what to do, nor should a mayor get involved in international affairs. But see, this is what communists do, my friends. They get a little bit of a foothold. And being a mayor whether it's New York City or Sheridan, Wyoming, being a mayor you're not the president. You're not the governor. You're not a senator. You're not a congressional representative. You won a small race in a admittedly big city. But let's just be honest about your election, Zoran. The turnout was pretty low. And you only won the general election by 51% of the vote. It was not a landslide. But communists, they don't care about that. The only thing they care about is gaining power. Once they gain power, they will use it to the nth degree. They will stretch the confines of the office they hold until, somebody stops them, until it's like a rubber band, right? They'll take a rubber band once you give it to them, and they'll just continue stretching it, usually until it breaks, which is the problem with communism. But they'll just stretch that rubber band as far as you possibly can, and they'll keep going until somebody grabs a hold of it and says, no, you're done. But we're just at the beginning of this thing. And anybody who didn't believe Zoran Mamdani, well, you need to go back and listen to his victory speech. It was very different, that there's no problem too big or no problem too small. That's the scary part. Well, let's go ahead and take our second break. And when we come back, we'll finish up with Zoran Mamdani. But first, an absolutely outrageous profit timeout. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm your host, David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. A record, my friends, that frankly, nobody in the mainstream media can ever come close to because they don't really care about the truth. The only thing they care about is their distribution, how many ads they can shovel through there, which is why one of the reasons why their articles end up being 2,700 pages long. Okay, so I'm joking a little bit. So 8 or 9 or 10. pages long. By the way, I just got a note from our Secretary of State. He'll be joining the program in a couple of minutes. So I'm looking forward to talking to him about the budget, about what's going on in the Secretary of State's office. There's been a lot of back and forth going on between him and the Gov, and I know what to make of it, but we haven't talked about it enough. So I'm glad that we're going to have Chuck on the program and we can visit with him. I mean, I think it's absolutely outrageous that the governor is trying to prohibit you knowing, the Wyoming public knowing about this ballot measure just by budgeting. And that's how government controls a lot of what happens. Governors and members of the legislature, if they don't like something, they just defund it. Doesn't matter if you like it or not. If it's not on the governor's agenda, if you don't have any money to do it, whatever it is, it's pretty hard to do that. So I mean, it's whomever holds the purse strings holds the power, and that's another thing that the members of our legislature they're getting the message kind of. But the members of the House of Representatives, they control the purse strings. They don't have to approve all of this ridiculous pork barrel spending that comes from the governor. They don't have to vote yes. They can just vote no and say, we're not going to fund it. You can't fund it. Then if you can't pay for it, you can't do it. And so, I mean, it's just another example of how Republicans, how conservatives have allowed the left to wrest control away from the rest with a W, not with an R. But if you control the purse strings, you control the whole shooting match. And conservatives and Republicans in the state, they really should, get wise to that. And they need to start using it. I mean, there's no reason why the House of Representatives agrees with this stuff. I mean, okay, so the governor puts forth a budget proposal. There's no reason why the legislature has to say yes. I mean, they can just kill something on the floor, let the Senate try to put it back in and say, hey, look, if you want to pass the budget, then you're going to do it without this. And so what if we have a state shutdown? That might actually be a good thing. But did you know that in Wyoming, there are 800 state employees for every 10,000 citizens? As far as I know, that's more than any other state. 800 state employees. And, one of the worst examples, I think, is Hazard County to the south of me in Johnson County. I bet that 75% of the people that live there work for government in one way or another. They either work for the school system, or they work for the county, or they work for the BLM or the Forest Service or Game and Fish, or whatever branch of government that you can think of. But think about that: 3/4 of an entire county, or definitely of an entire city anyway, of working for the state. All right, so we've got Secretary of State Chuck Gray on the program. Chuck.
Yes.
How are we doing, Mr. Secretary?
Great to be on. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing all right, man. We were just talking about your little spat with the governor and the funding for the ballot measure. I played a little bit of your video, but why don't you tell us what's going on?
Well, it's very serious. I mean, this is once again Governor Mark Gordon trying to abrogate the will of the silent majority here in Wyoming. And this time what he's trying to do is prevent public notice that is required under state law of the ballot initiative that has been signed by over 30,000 Wyomingites. It's the first initiative to be placed on the ballot in over 30 years. And in Wyoming state law, notice is required to be done, just like on constitutional amendments, on initiatives. That's in Title 22. In order for the ballot initiative to be properly done, it has to be noticed. And this was our number one priority in our budget. We placed it as, you can look at our budget, it's listed as number one. And he denied it. It is the first denial that Mark Gordon has done on any statewide elected official in 7 years. His denial of the notice required under Wyoming state law for the property tax initiative. And then he has his allies at Cowboy State Daily print this just absurd story saying that, one, it's advertising, which is absurd. This is the notice that is required under Wyoming state law in order for the initiative to be properly done. In fact, in Iowa, where notice was not properly done on a ballot initiative a couple decades ago, the initiative was ruled null and void because the notice had not been properly done. And so this is very serious. It needs to be done. And then he also goes and says, well, this should just be absorbed in the Secretary of State's budget. The problem is this has always been footnoted in our budget. Always.
Well, and it's been what the not to interrupt you,
and you
Mr.
can't
Secretary.
Just absorb. You can't just transfer from salaries to publication costs. That is illegal. And he's either just does not understand the fundamentals of the budget, that this is a piece of law. This isn't block granted like the school funding is. This is a piece of law that they pass. The budget is in law, and it allocates funds to specific purposes. And you can't just willy-nilly. I mean, Gordon can't just go out and spend $100,000 on his long-lost grandmother in Corsica because it's a block grant. He can't do that. And for him to suggest that it's a block grant, it can be spent in any way he wants, is absurd.
All right, Chuck, let me just ask you a quick question. I'm sure a lot of my audience is familiar with how, their local boards notice things in the paper. With and I don't remember the exact numbers, but when I was on an elected board, we had to notice things in 3 different papers. So 3 different ways. So we'd hang a notice at the courthouse, one at City Hall, and, we might put one at the library. So with a statewide ballot initiative, what counts as notice? What do you actually have to do? Is it just put it in the statewide paper, or is there a lot more to it?
Title 22 is pretty clear that in the 12 months preceding the election, and this is not just on constitutional amendments. There were some on social media that were claiming it was just on constitutional amendments. That is false. Title 22 is very clear that it also is for initiatives, that you have to, in the 12 weeks preceding the election, provide notice of the vote that is going to be taken by the people in that general election. And in order for it properly to be done, it needs to be noticed. And we're going to make sure that it's properly done, because I think what this very cynical governor is trying to queue up is he's trying to queue up a legal challenge on this initiative. And he has allies that don't want property tax reduction. Of course, he's vetoed property tax reduction many times. And so that's what he's trying to queue up. And we're not going to allow him to do that. So that's why we have to bring accountability and bring this to the forefront. And of course, he's going to try to use his allies in the legacy media to put out his falsehoods. And that's what he's doing.
All right. So before you were Secretary of State, you were also in the legislature for quite a long time. Can you just quickly give me the history of the legislature denying funding to the Secretary of State's office and to other of the statewide elected offices? I mean, there's been several attempts to remove powers from our executive branch or different departments through these budget footnotes. But I was wondering if you could give me a sense of how that worked, and that the legislature does try to do that.
Okay. And thanks, David. I'm getting a little feedback, but I think as long as we're not talking over each other, it seems to be coming from your mic. So I think we're fine as long as we're not talking over each other. But thanks for that question, David. The governor for the last 7 years, and he's always put this at the start of his budget, Mark Gordon has always granted the budget requests for all of the statewide elected officials. This is the first time he has not done that in 7 years. And that's a form removing budgetary authority from these offices is a form of taking away duties, which of course the legislature insiders have a history of trying to do. They did that with Cindy Hill back in 2010, which was horrifying. Luckily, we had a state Supreme Court back then that overturned that on a 3-2 vote. I'm not sure that we'd get a similar result now with the current makeup of the state Supreme Court. And then, of course, literally within 2 weeks of myself being nominated as Secretary of State, I was the first conservative to be nominated for statewide elected office since Cindy Hill. They tried to take away our duties, and the only thing that stopped that was the conservatives gaining 26 seats in the 24 election, and then taking the majority as well. So that's the only thing that stopped them removing the duties of this office. So I think it's a form, you're exactly right, of what the insiders and the left does. They've maintained control and power for so long, and the fact that we are getting the truth out there. Just look at this hearing yesterday on Management Council, where you had senators talking over witnesses, yelling, just berating witnesses that were talking about a very important issue. It's the same tactic that Kurt Meyer and Mark Gordon used about a month ago on the State Building Commission, when I was talking very respectfully about the need for us to implement the pro-Second Amendment ban on gun-free zones that, of course, Governor Gordon had vetoed a year earlier, but this year, because he knew his veto would be overridden, he refused to sign it, but he allowed it to become law without his signature, and now he's been slow-walking the rulemaking. And we were talking about the need for us to expedite this and get this done. And all of a sudden, Mark and Gord and Kurt, in sort of a team up, start yelling, screaming, banging the tables. And then their allies in the Cowboy State Daily the next day are saying that we're being nasty. I mean, it's astounding how they try to twist everything. And that's why what you're doing, David, is so important. But we need to continue to bring accountability. Getting back to the follow through here, we need to continue to bring accountability, and that's what they don't like, and that's why they're trying to shut us down. And that's one of the tactics the left uses. They try to yell over people and gaslight them and accuse us of what they're actually guilty of. But we're going to continue to bring light on what is happening out there, and that's what we're doing the last few days since this very troubling denial of the statutorily required ballot publication costs for the property tax reduction initiative.
Well, it's not just your funding that is troubling in the governor's budget. I mean, the entire thing is one big giant gaslight on Wyoming citizens. I covered it yesterday on the podcast, where I pointed out that is column 3 in the budget book that says, hey, what would it cost you to do the same thing you did last year this year? And it's right in the governor's budget book. It says it would cost $1 billion less to do the same thing. And then he adds $2 billion on top of it and claims that, well, all of these things are necessary. Well, the truth is, Chuck, and you've been in the Capitol building long enough to know that we've doubled the Wyoming budget in the last 4 years. And it's an incredibly bloated budget for a state of only 586,000 people. And it's, for the governor to say all this is necessary, it really is gaslighting Wyoming citizens. I mean, it's completely wrong.
Yeah, his budget is basically a massive press exercise. He recently brought in Amy Edmonds, who is very left-wing and worked for Liz Cheney and learned a lot of the tactics that the insiders used over the last few years. And you can tell this is sort of a product of Amy Edmonds, this entire budget, the way they label it the essentials and lead with all of this rhetoric that then you get to page 3 and it all goes out the window, where you have this massive increase in the budget in double digits in terms of the billions of dollars now that we are in. It is an historically left-wing budget. And you can see that the way that they set it up in the first 2 pages, and then literally on page 3, all of the conservative rhetoric goes out the window, and the actual substance of it is a massive increase in government expenditure.
All right, Chuck, since I've got you on the show, I think I might be a little remiss if I didn't hit you with this question. So what are you going to do in the next election? You're going to be Secretary of State? You're going to run for a higher office? What are your plans?
Well, David, I appreciate that question, David, and I think we're continuing to evaluate it here at the end of the year. Haven't made a decision yet. I do want to see what Congresswoman Hageman does. I've said that a couple times on your show, and that's still my position. And I have so much respect for Congresswoman Hageman. She's doing a great job. Huge what she did yesterday in opening up coal leasing and repealing this awful Biden era RMP. This is huge. Big deal what got done yesterday. She's doing great work, and I want to see what her decision is. So haven't made a call yet. I'm really focused on our work. I think everything's going to be okay. I know some folks are getting nervous right now. I think that having an election in the calendar year in 2026, calendar year 2026, is going to be really good for our state. I think where we've moved in many states where they have 1.5 year, 2-year elections, it's just too long. I think we're going to have that vibrant conversation, and it's coming soon.
All right. Well, I can't, like I said, got to do my job a little bit. And,
I appreciate that. Hey, remember, I was in radio, I had a show for a long time too, and you're doing a great job in bringing accountability, David. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. Well, I got to run. Thank you very much for taking the time to visit with me. If my audience wants to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Yeah, my cell, 24/7, 365, 307-251-1372, 307-251-1372. And one last thing. I will sue the governor to make sure that we have notice for the property tax reduction ballot initiative if it comes down to it. Because what he's trying to do is silencing the will of the 30,000 plus Wyomingites who signed this initiative, and the people beyond the 30,000 plus Wyomingites that signed this initiative that are going to weigh in on this initiative when it is placed on the ballot, and we have certified it to be on the ballot in 2026. Him trying to unilaterally silence that process and prevent it from occurring is unacceptable. And so I am going to make sure that the notice is properly done and that the ballot initiative is properly done in the 2026 election. We'll do everything, and we will get it done.
Sounds good, Chuck. I appreciate your time, man. I got to go. Keep us updated.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, that was Secretary of State Chuck Gray on the program, and kind of came together sort of quick. I sent him a message yesterday, and I just said, "Hey, do you want to come on the show?" And we were able to put it together. So I'm glad everything worked out. There's a lot going on right now, and it's not just the what's happening with the election or any of that. There's a ton of stuff that's happening here. And, that's why I love doing what I do, and I'll keep doing it. So anyway, moving on with the program, if I could figure out how to, let's see here. There we go. Maybe that changes a little bit. There we go. I was trying to figure out how to get the, I guess it was over here, how to get the name off the screen. Still, this is why I need a producer, and he's off in Gillette doing whatever he's doing today. So anyway, moving on. Before the secretary came on the show, we were talking about Zoran Mamdani in New York, and there are a number of pretty concerning things that are happening. The guy was telling you the truth, and the piece that we covered beforehand was he says he's going to follow international law. He's not going to be following the laws that we have here in America. No. He's going to pay attention to international law. Well, there are some other troubling things that should just convince New Yorkers that this is exactly what they voted for. Now, this is a piece from the Daily Caller. Socialist Zoran Mamdani won't stop asking his supporters to redistribute wealth to him. Mamdani posted a video on X on Tuesday stating that he needs to raise at least $4 million so he can pay his employees. $4 million to pay his employees, go through 50,000 resumes he has received and implement his socialist policies. He bragged that his campaign is not relying on wealthy donors, but rather the average working American. Now, in his video, he makes it sound as though, it's just him. You supported him in the past, and that you need to support him now. And he goes to great lengths to say that it's all of our funding. It is all grassroots. All of it is, and it's not wealthy donors like, I don't know, Andrew Cuomo and Donald Trump. It's just all of it. It's you and me, really, except that it's not. Remember the video that I played for you? I guess it was, and I'm trying to find it right now, but it was last week when we were talking about CARE. Here it is. I got it. See, Zoran Mamdani's campaign was paid for largely by an organization called the Council on American Islamic Relations. And one of the head people at that is this gal named Linda Sarsour. Here's what she said about Zoran Mamdani. Check this out.
Right now, I'm a little more quiet because I'm on the quiet side of this race, but I'm going to tell you that once November 4th comes around, I will tell the story. The story is not just, that it's random that Zoran ascended to this place. It is our Muslim American communities. And I'll also say that it's Muslim money. The PACs that have supported Zoran, or a particular PAC that has supported Zoran, is probably over 80% of Muslim American donors in this country. High net donors, grassroots donors. And I want to make the point that the Unity and Justice Fund PAC, which is the CARE Super PAC, was the largest institutional donor to the pro-Zoran PAC in New York.
All right, so it was CARE that funded the vast majority of Zoran Mamdani's campaign. Now, it's fascinating to me that there are so many people that are worried about AIPAC, the American Israeli Palestinian Political Action Committee. There's so many people worried about that, but they're not saying a word about CARE and their ties to, obviously radical terrorist organizations. Some of those folks that CARE is associated with are actually on the list of terrorist sympathizers or terrorist supporting organizations. But nobody says anything about those. No. And I've got a piece here buried in the stack of stuff somewhere where CARE is actually paying $1,000 for protesters. That, you show up and you protest in favor of the Palestinian cause, and they'll pay you $1,000. Yeah, I mean, who would have saw that coming? But so now here is Zoran Mamdani telling you that he needs to, let's see here, there we go. I'm telling you that you need to donate to his campaign so that he can implement all of his socialist policies. Check this out.
2 weeks since we won the election. We've been pretty busy.
Rejects the Democratic Socialist Zoran Mamdani.
Too often, this is a time of just celebration as opposed to preparation. We want to make it both.
A lot of these things are new, but one of them is pretty old. Fundraising. But why are we fundraising? Well, we have less than 50 days until we take office. We have a lot. We have to vet the 50,000 resumes we've received. Thank you. We have to keep paying our incredible team. Thank you. And we have to plan not just our inauguration, but our policy implementation. Now, unlike the campaign, transitions do not get public matching funds from the city. So that 8-to-1 match, gone. It's up to us to raise the money.
So wait a minute. He says that he needs money to put his policies into place. Now, isn't that what the mayor's budget is for? Once he gets into office, all of those funds, the levers of power are at his control, and he's got all the funding he needs to run this. Why is it that he needs outside funding? Maybe, just maybe, that some of his plans might be extra, I don't know what you would call it, outside of his duties, outside of the office of the mayor. Maybe he's got some plans that just they can't be done in the mayor's office, which is why he needs to raise money for them and continue to get you to support them. See, a lot of this is political activity so that, he can continue to convince you that he's doing a good job. When his bus scheme blows up in his face and the government grocery store idea ends up collapsing because it costs way too much money and there's no food to put in the grocery store. When all of those things come crashing down among his ears, then he still has money so that he can convince you that he's doing a great job. I mean, this is going to be, I mean, I kind of feel bad for the people that are in New York. I mean, but they did vote for this stuff. But this is going to be a fascinating experiment in political destruction. And I don't even know how to put it, but just watching what's going to happen in New York City once Zoran Mamdani starts putting all of these socialist and communist policies into place. I mean, it's going to be incredible, my friends. Let's go ahead and finish what he has to say.
Usually campaigns take that as an opportunity to rely on wealthy donors, but that's not us. You've already been incredible. We've raised more than $1 million in just 2 weeks. Our average donation is around $77, and more than 12,000 of you have donated so far, which is much lower than the last administration's transition. But we're still asking for your help because we need to raise $4 million in total.
We still need more of your money.
We start to deliver, not start to prepare. I hope very soon not to have to ask you for money. But until then, I'm asking for you to go to transition2025.com and give whatever you can to help build a New York that everyone can afford. This is your city, and I can't wait to get to work.
Yeah, I bet.
No, I'm kidding.
Well, it's pretty soon not going to be your city. It's going to be replaced with a radical Islamist that is going to destroy it when he starts to put all of his communist policies in place. Well, let's see here. We're pretty close to the bottom of the hour. Let's go ahead and take our last break. And when we come back, we'll finish up the program. There's lots more that I've got in the stack of stuff. We've had a rockin' program so far. But we're going to continue. More in a minute. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God himself. You know, a lot of people say that that's a kind of an arrogant statement. I mean, when Rush, I stole it from Rush, you know, obviously, but when he used to say that, everybody said, well, that's awfully arrogant of him. Talent on loan from God. No, it's not. We should all acknowledge where we got all of our gifts from, and it's not, they didn't come from thin air. You didn't create them. He did. So that's why I tell you, man, I'm really thankful that I have you as my audience. And, you know, I can't tell you how much fun it is to be able to sit down and talk to you anytime that I want, and to know that you're going to, you know, listen to whatever comes out. So thank you for watching the program. Thank you for listening. Thank you now for reading, since we have the Outrider, the Cowboy State Politics newsletter. I love that name, by the way. That's You can thank the lovely Christine for that. It's but we're going to have that. We're going to have the app coming out pretty soon. So things are moving. Oh, and I should probably tell you, I'm adding a new and improved article section to the website. Some of you might call it a blog, but I'm going to call it the article section. I think I'm also going to refer to that as the Outrider blog. But anyway, lots coming on Cowboy State Politics, and thank you very much for being a part of it. From The Blaze, terrible reporter. Trump eviscerates fake news. ABC calls for the FCC to consider yanking the license. All right, so first of all, I don't like the last part of that. That I think it is better that we expose these people for who they are. The best disinfectant is sunlight, and there is no better way to expose how depraved, how corrupt, how dishonest, how completely ridiculous the mainstream media is than to allow them to broadcast. And it's gone are the days when big media, the big five, controlled everything that came out. It is no longer ABC, always broadcasting communism. The other broadcasting communism company, CBS, constantly broadcasting socialism, PMS, NBC, and CNN, and throw Fox in there too, because they're one of the big channels. But the days of that just being the entirety of the media are gone. That's out. That's one of the biggest programs in Wyoming is this program, and this doesn't. I'm not connected to any of the big media sources, the Cow Pie or the Pravda on the Platte. Pravda on the Platte is kind of irrelevant anymore, but or the Turkey Vulture, the Wyoming Tribune, Eagle, and Cheyenne. They've probably taken the place of the Trib. But the days of big media being in charge, they're gone. Most people don't get their news from any of the big stations. It's mostly from independent sources like Cowboy State Politics, like the Southeast Wyoming Sentinel, my friend Marie Hamilton down there in the corner of the state. Most people get their news from folks like us. And so I think there is no better thing that we could do to some of these leftist, propagandists in the media, I guess, than to expose them to the bright light of the sun. But here's what The Blaze says, quote, President Donald Trump called on the FCC chairman, Brandon Carr, to investigate all the always broadcasting communism news network and consider pulling its license for its fake reporting. Quote, I think the license should be taken away from ABC because your news is so fake and it's so wrong. During Trump's bilateral meeting with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, an ABC News reporter pressed the president about the delayed release of the files related to Jeffrey Epstein. Quote, why wait for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now? She asked. And he responded, it's not the question that I mind. It's your attitude. Just watch this. This is a long video, but he absolutely eviscerates this reporter. It's kind of embarrassing. Check this out.
I don't know if that number's right, but it's pretty. Mr. President, why wait for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now?
It's not the question that I mind, it's your attitude. I think you are a terrible reporter. It's the way you ask these questions. You start off with a man who's highly respected, asking him a horrible, insubordinate, and just a terrible question. And you could even ask that same exact question nicely. You're all psyched up. Somebody psychs you over at ABC, they're going to psych it. You're a terrible person and a terrible reporter. As far as the Epstein files I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I threw him out of my club many years ago because I thought he was a sick pervert. And I guess I turned out to be right. But you know who does have? Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, who ran Harvard, was with him every single night, every single weekend. They lived together. They went to his island many times. I never did. Andrew Weissman here. All these guys were friends of his. You don't even talk about those people.
And I think that's one of the biggest issues, and it is so blatant that the media doesn't care about all these other people, all of these Democrats who were palling around with Jeffrey Epstein, the guy who was the head at Harvard University. was one of the people who was one of Jeffrey's best buddies. Right? They hung out together all the time. Look at all of the people, all of the Democrats that Jeffrey Epstein donated to. ABC News isn't asking about all of those, but what they are asking about is Donald Trump's ties, which, from what I've seen, there are none. Right? They're trying to create a story around Donald Trump, a story that doesn't exist, and they're ignoring the one over here that, they're chocked full of evidence to say, look, man, these Democrats are all about Jeffrey Epstein. But pay no attention to that. Focus over here where there really isn't a story. Let's continue with the Trump lashing.
You just keep going on the Epstein files. And what the Epstein is a Democrat hoax to try and get me not to be able to talk about the $21 trillion that I talked about today. It's a hoax. Now, I just got a little report, and I put it in my pocket, of all the money that he's given to Democrats. He gave me none, zero, no money to me, but he gave money to Democrats. And people are wise to your hoax, and ABC's your company, your crappy company, is one of the perpetrators. And I'll tell you something.
You're a crappy company.
I think the license should be taken away from ABC because your news is so fake and it's so wrong. And we have a great commissioner, the chairman, who should look at that, because I think when you come in and when you're 97% negative to Trump and then Trump wins the election in a landslide, that means obviously your news is not credible and you're not credible as a reporter. So I've answered your question. You should go and look at the Democrats who received money from Epstein, who spent their time. Larry Summers was
It just
with him all the
goes
time.
on and on
That
and on. You're a terrible reporter, and you're a terrible person, and you're terrible and awful, and you should. We're going to start calling that Trump lashing. I'm coining that term. The Trump lashing that was given out to the ABC News reporter was almost unsustainable. I mean, there was no way that she could stand there and take that, which I guess, if that's coming your way, what do? I guess you just stand there and take it. First, he's the president of the United States, so it's not like you could do anything, or leave, right? If you leave, all the video cameras are going to turn and watch you leave, so I guess you just have to sit there and take it. But and then to add on top of it that it's Donald Trump delivering the Trump lashing, I don't know what you do, right? I mean, it's there's not a lot you can do. You're in the Oval Office, and the president of the United States is letting you have it, and for good reason, man. He sued ABC News for I guess it was an undisclosed amount, but over that video that they edited or the interview they edited with Kamala Harris, where you listen to the original and she sounds like dumb as a box of rocks. But they edited it to make her sound halfway intelligent, which is, it's pretty hard to do. But the two versions, they bear no resemblance to each other. So Trump sued him. The Always Broadcasting Communism Network paid up. And so obviously Trump is going to look at their reporter and say, you're a terrible reporter and you're a terrible person. And anyway, we all know what that's worth. So the BBC, I've been trying to highlight stories about AI because very, very soon, if not already, you're going to be unable to escape AI. One of my friends sent me a text message the other day. Hey, how do I remove Gemini off my phone? And I replied, I don't think that you can. Pretty soon, AI is going to be running everything. In fact, parts of this program. Not this part, but there are parts of this program that I use AI for. Do a little bit of research here or there, and to automate some tasks. A lot of the tasks with the app that I've created were done with AI. So you're not going to be able to get away with it. But there's an interesting piece from the BBC entitled "Google Boss Says $1 Trillion AI Investment Boom Has Elements of Irrationality." And what he compares it to is the dot-com boom of the 1990s. Many listeners of Cowboy State Politics were not alive during the dot-com boom, but many of us remember it. There were websites popping up all over the place, and there was money going everywhere. But the problem is that those websites didn't produce anything, right? They were just investing in an idea. They were investing in the potentiality of the internet to be something that it would become later, but it just wasn't going to become that right at that moment. And so it created this giant bubble in the market, and pretty soon it popped. And all of those websites that had a tremendous amount of money invested in them, they all crashed and burned. That's the irrationality that this Google boss is talking about. That you're investing in a in an idea. Now, certainly, I don't think there's any way that we're going to get away from AI. I think that we are way beyond that. And frankly, there may be elements of AI that are a real danger to our society. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I find a lot of this stuff pretty terrifying. But you're not going to be able to get away. So the bubble is going to come. I mean, if it is a bubble right now, it's only a matter of time that you have to wait for those investments to become a reality. So and I'm going to play the video bite in just a second, but here's what he says, quote, speaking exclusively to the BBC News, Sundar Pichai, the head of Google, said while the growth of artificial intelligence investment had been an extraordinary moment, there was some irrationality in the current AI boom. It comes amid fears in Silicon Valley and beyond of a bubble as the value of AI tech companies has soared in recent months, and companies spend big on the burgeoning industry. Asked whether Google would be immune to the impact of the AI bubble bursting, Mr. Pichai said that the tech giant could weather that potential storm, but also issued a warning. Quote, I think no company is going to be immune, he said, including us. So he's telling you that there is a bubble that is going to burst with all of this AI. So the interview, which, I mean, this video segment is actually pretty short, but go ahead and take a listen of, let's see here, here it is, there's a bubble coming and you better pay attention.
Even the potential of this technology, the excitement is very rational. It's also true when we go through these investment cycles, there are moments we overshoot, right, collectively as an industry. We can look back at the internet right now. There was clearly a lot of excess investment, but none of us would question whether the internet was profound or did it drive a lot of impact. It's fundamentally changed how we work digitally as a society. I expect AI to be the same. So I think it's both rational, and there are elements of irrationality through a moment like this.
Yeah, so the irrationality that he's talking about is the potentiality that AI has, that potentially in the future at some point, and it's coming faster than probably any of us are ready for, but in the future, there is potential for a great amount of profit making to happen. That's why people invest in it. But we're not there yet. And when he says there's irrationality to it, it means that we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. Even though AI has become pretty pervasive, I mean, it's like everywhere. I keep waiting for somebody to say, hey, buy this pen. It's AI powered. Maybe it writes on its own or something. But that's kind of where we're at, right? Like everybody attaches the AI label to everything. And it's all an attempt to make you buy, make you buy their products or invest in them. A particular focus in Alphabet's development, and Alphabet is Google, of specialized super chips for AI that compute with NVIDIA chips run by Huang, which recently reached the world's first $5 trillion valuation. As valuations rise, some analysts have expressed skepticism about the complicated web of the $1.4 trillion worth of deals being done around OpenAI, which is expected to have revenues this year of less than 1/1,000th of the planned investment. Now, let me just read that to you one more time. As valuations rise, some analysts have expressed skepticism about the complicated web of the $1.4 trillion worth of deals being done around OpenAI, which is expected to have revenues this year of less than 1/1,000th of the planned investment. So that's incredible, though. So it's 0.001 of all of the investment that's being generated on this entire thing. I mean, that's incredible. It has raised fears stock markets are heading for a repeat of the dot-com boom. This is the one I mentioned at the beginning of this segment, and bust of the late 1990s. This saw the values of early internet companies surge amid a wave of optimism of what was a new technology before the bubble burst in early 2000, and many of the share prices collapsed. This is irrational exuberance at its peak. That's a term that you sometimes hear around investing, that there's excitement around a particular product or a particular company, and so there's a tremendous amount of investment that the potential revenue generating capacity of that company is unable to realize. It's irrational. There's no reason to it. People just invest in it. It's going to be great. Now, sometimes that works out. Early on, I know I got an acquaintance. I don't know if I'd exactly use the word friend, but an acquaintance of mine. When Facebook first started getting going, went public. He invested $5,000. It's either $5,000 or he bought 5,000 shares, whatever. But imagine what that 5,000 investment is worth, whether it's dollars or shares, what it's worth right now. So sometimes the irrational exuberance bears fruit, but when you've got the head of the company where a lot of this stuff is taking place telling you that this is irrational, maybe you ought to stomp on the brakes a little bit. In comments echoing those made by U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Alan Greenspan in 1996, warning of irrational exuberance in the market well ahead of the dot-com crash, Mr. Pinche said that the industry can, quote, overshoot in investment cycles like this. We can look back at the internet right now. There was clearly a lot of excess investment, but none of us would question whether the internet was profound. I expect AI to be the same, so I think it's both rational, and there are elements of irrationality throughout a moment like this. So that's the benefit, the future benefit of it is almost undeniable, but the irrational part of it right now is that the company that everybody's investing in can only produce 1/1000th of the investment generated to it. So it is a bubble, and it may very well burst sooner rather than later. I haven't talked about, let's see here. You know what? I want to go here first. The propagandists at Politico. I had a piece on what Hamas is doing, but I'm in a pretty good mood, and so I'd rather not be a downer this morning. Too much fun stuff happening. So we'll talk about Hamas on Open Line Friday, which is tomorrow. Here's a piece from, I didn't even put down where it was from. But anyway, it's entitled, How Propagandists at Politico Use Corruption to Hide Their Ignorance. Politico has, anybody in, political circles knows that the outlet Politico really is nothing more than a left-wing propaganda, outlet. I mean, that's pretty much all that they are. If you want left-wing stuff, go to Politico. And I quote, when thinking about literary analogies that explain the inner workings of Washington, the emperor's new clothes frequently comes to mind. Having used the analogy several years ago to dissect a legislative collapse, it also explains the mentality of most of the Fourth Estate. The Fourth Estate is the press. But put simply, most reporters in Washington have a superficial knowledge of policy, and they know it. But rather than admit those weaknesses publicly, they instead try to conceal their shortcomings when exposed. It's a combination of ignorance and corruption that helps explain the public's understandable cynicism about the corporate media. And what they're talking about is these, talking heads that different networks have on their program who really, I guess they make a couple of salient remarks, but you can tell that none of them understand the underpinnings of the policy or argument that they're making. They just really just understand the talking point, and that's it. And the only reason they're on or writing is to just put out this propaganda. Take, for instance, a recent Politico article that attempted to, quote, fact check a social media post by Donald Trump regarding transgender procedures. In his post, Trump accused Democrats of seeking, quote, over $1 trillion in new spending to continue free health care for illegal aliens. It was actually $1.4 trillion, as well as taxpayer-funded transgender surgery for minors and allowing, quote, illegal alien criminals to steal billions of dollars in American taxpayer benefits, among other claims. But the legislation ultimately did not ban gender reassignment surgeries within Medicaid, as Trump claims. The House-approved provision was struck out in the Senate after it was found to run afoul of the rules governing party line reconciliation process. The argument fact-checking Trump went like this. Democrats' September spending bill, offered just before the government shutdown, repealed all of the Medicaid and healthcare provisions in the summer's Big Beautiful Bill. That legislation originally had provisions in preventing Medicaid from covering transgender procedures for minors. But that section was removed in the Senate. So Trump was right. It was going to be there. But the Senate moved it out. Because the transgender defining provisions got struck from the Big Beautiful Bill, Democrats' move to repeal it would not affect the transgender interventions, making Trump's allegations inaccurate, or so Politico thought. But they missed an important fact, that the subsidies, a permanent extension of which Democrats included in their bill, do fund transgender procedures. This was pointed out in an email to Ben Johansen and Meredith Lee Hill, the reporters who wrote the story. Now, the Schumer bill contains a permanent extension of Obamacare subsidies. So, without going into the whole thing, essentially you had a bunch of hacks that were just repeating the talking points that the Democrats had given them, and they didn't understand the philosophic and policy underpinnings of the argument itself. And so they had no idea that actually that policy did fund transgender surgeries. So what happens is outfits like Politico, they'll fact check a comment or they'll fact check a post. And it is, what would I call that? I would call it like drive-by. This is exactly what that Rush called the drive-by media. So it's a drive-by hit, right? So they put the fact check out and then they go on past it and they never think about it again. But it's seen so often or so many times that a lot of people assume that it's true. And these talking heads, they don't have to worry about it again because most people don't do their research. Oh, speaking of research, I hate to interrupt this discussion, but I promised you something yesterday, and I just remembered it. Yesterday on the program, I was telling you, I'm glad I remembered this. Didn't want to go back on what I told you. But anyway, I was telling you about the WEA's Safe and Just Schools cadre. And I told you that there was a logo that they had made that included the socialist fist. Now, let me just show that to you real quick here. Let's see here. Presentation 1. Here we go. Yep. Allow. There you have it. And I'll make it big for you. So that is the logo for the Wyoming Education Association's so-called Safe and Just Schools cadre. And you see right there in the middle of it, there's the socialist fist. Now, why is it, do you think, that the teachers union would use a logo that included the socialist fist and just, don't worry about it. It's nothing to see here. It's just all togetherness and power that we all work together. No. That logo has been used by socialist and communist regimes since they first started. It is totally, that's what it is. And, another piece, and I should just show this to you too while I'm at it. Let's see, screen share. We'll do it again. This is why, again, I need a producer. So these are the pillars that are underneath that logo. This is what the Safe and Just Schools cadre, entails. And look over, you can see the red arrow that I have pointed to what's called the social justice umbrella. And let me just read this to you. It says, quote, and all of these things are trainings for teachers. Listen to this. Quote, in this training, we will explore what defines social justice and what fits under that so-called umbrella. What social justice issues are impacting our students' learning? During this session, we will explore ways each of us can activate change. What do you suppose that last phrase means? Activate change. It sounds a heck of a lot like activist, does it not? That we can be active in our classrooms and we can convince our students that this is actually the truth. that using the socialist fist, which, by the way, if you confront any of these people about it, they will absolutely deny that these things exist. I pulled these screenshots off of their website this morning doing show prep. It is absolutely what the Wyoming Education Association believes, and it is right there for all to see. Now, I first broke this story, I think like 3 years ago. And this is one of the Cowboy state politics success stories, by the way. When I first broke this story, I don't know, I'm going to say it took about a half hour once it was posted that I started seeing that logo pop up everywhere on social media. It was actually pretty cool to watch. And I just kind of sat back on, oh, I'm proud of these people listening to the story and then doing their own research. And I mean, it actually went pretty big. Now, obviously the WEA didn't back off of what their mission is. They never would. I mean, that's what they do, man. And they're just a bunch of activists, and they admit it on the website. And we are so far beyond not listening to what these people say. We should absolutely take them at their word. I mean, you don't put stuff on your website that you don't believe. And you don't leave it on there for years after it was exposed, if this is not exactly what they're doing. And it is the Wyoming Education Association that is suing the Wyoming legislature because they claim that schools are not being funded enough. And the judge, of course, rules that, you have to buy them computers and, feed them lunch and have school resource officers, which I would like to know why any of those are mandated by the Wyoming Constitution. But really, what the funding lawsuit boils down to is more money in dues for the Wyoming Education Association. I mean, they collect memberships just like every other union. So in other words, my friends, it's just perfect example of what the WEA does. Well, we pretty much burned up another busy broadcast hour on the program. Don't forget that tomorrow is Open Line Friday. I'm really excited about it. I can't wait. I love doing that show, and I love talking to you. So make sure that you make plans to watch Open Line Friday tomorrow. I'll have the phone lines open at 8 a.m., and Ken should be back tomorrow. So we'll be back in the downtown studio. And I mean, it's not that I don't like working in this studio. I do. I mean, it's I don't have to go very far for my coffee pot, which is right there. But anyway, my friends, that'll do it for today. And have a good rest of your afternoon. Stay warm. Go buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. From the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.